Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Cultivate Advisors first webinar of 2020. Excited to have you here with us. I know a lot of people are just getting into the room. We're closing in on well over 100 attendees, so people are obviously pretty focused on coming in and getting some traction here this year for 2020. I hope everybody had a great new year. Hope everybody got some time away from their business, had time for the family to enjoy some holidays. And really excited that you've chosen to leverage maybe a lunch or take a break between your meetings or whatever you've got going on today, so we can talk about how to re-energize your sales funnel. We've got a lot of great content today. Really excited to share it with you. If I haven't met you, my name is Casey Clark. I am CEO of Cultivate Advisors. Thank you for being a valued community member and trusting our advisors to help you get your business to the next level. I do have a special guest that's going to be joining me a little later as we get into this webinar. His name is Patrick Dichter. Some of you may know Patrick just based on he may be your advisor. So he's one of our advisors out of Denver. Patrick has got some unbelievable experience when it comes to leading B2B sales teams, and really, really excited for him to share some of his wisdom with you today as we get into some of our topics. So just really excited to have him, and he'll come on for about 15 or 20 minutes here within the webinar as we get started. So just to give you a couple ground rules, in case this is your first webinar with us, I see a lot of the attendees here have joined us before, so welcome back. But for those that might be new or have recently just joined the community, I want to let you know a few things. One, we like to use chat. So, I encourage everybody here, discuss and share best practices throughout. Some of our advisors and our team members are on as well, and they'll be jumping in and trying to answer any questions that they see. So don't be alarmed to just throw those questions in there, and somebody will do their best to get you some responses. We're going to throw out some different polls as well as give you options to click on different action items. Again, this is just to help keep a pulse on the group and make sure you can take action on things that we give you, or you can jump to the resources right away that we talk about. And then post-webinar, I'll share some of the other resources you can take on our Learning Center to go to the next level. Again, I know a majority here with joining us are clients. For those that maybe are special guests of advisors or just checking us out, for that special guest pass, you won't have access to dive and log into our website to get access to the post resources. So that's, again, just for our community members here that are joining. So I want to give just a couple updates about some things going on for the Cultivate community as we all are small business owners working to grow and scale our organizations. First off, our 2020 event schedule is set. We have set out the entire 2020 schedule, which includes our CEO webinars. This is obviously our first one. We've got our quarterly Cultivate Your Success events that happens in different markets, live time as well as a virtual. Those are going to be happening. You can see those dates. And then last, we've got Catapult. And you can see all of these at my.cultivateadvisors.com, and that's where you'll be able to register for those events once those registrations become available. So we encourage you to take advantage and go figure out which of these events do you want to go to this year, and make sure you get them marked in your calendar. We actually have a Google calendar that you can subscribe to. So you'll see that come out here in just a little bit, and you'll have access to go ahead and subscribe to that Google calendar, and that'll put everything onto hopefully if you have Google, you'll see that on your calendar moving forward, so you don't miss any of the events that comes with your Cultivate membership. 2020 Catapult, obviously we had our annual conference. It was a lot of fun. These are some of the pictures from the event this last year. Just an absolute blast. We've now planned and set up Catapult for this upcoming year. And we are going to be doing a launch in February. So a bunch of details coming your way for dates. I know a lot of people travel in for it, and it's just nice to have that information since it's such a big commitment for 3 full days to come share and really experience some time with the Cultivate members. So want to make sure I share that openly to keep your eyes peeled come February. And our Cultivate Your Success, just to bring attention to one of the events, our next one is February 12th. This year, what we've done is we've structured all of our events to happen with one event each month. We know business owners are busy. We're not expecting you to come to all of them, but this way you can kind of pick and choose the ones that you want and know that there's always going to be an event near about the middle of each month. So our next event is on February 12th. It's called Performance Mindset. It's going to be talking about how to get productivity levels up for you as the owner, but also how to take that and coach and train your team on productivity, which I know a lot of our business owners here in the community could absolutely get an increase in their productivity. That usually only means more time, to put towards things of money, and also better work-life balance, which I know many owners can struggle with. So Again, if you want to register for that, you just go to my.cultivateadvisors.com. I believe we'll have the links able to register here in the next 24 to 48 hours. We usually wait to set up the next registration link until we finish the event prior. All right. We did get a sponsor that is sponsoring all of our community events this year. They are called JustWorks. They are a PEO, that stands for a professional employer organization. Really big fan of JustWorks. This is who we use. They manage all of our payroll, our HR. They are essentially our HR service, outsourced service. And what I really like is that it's a co-employment model, meaning all of the employees of Cultivate are shared with JustWorks. So if you would like to remove some of the risk, some of the legal risk in HR that you can experience as a small business owner and want to get access to Fortune 500 level benefits at really cheap costs, I would strongly encourage you to check out JustWorks. They're a phenomenal partner for us. And one of my last updates here is just Cultivate's Facebook community. We started this after Catapult last year. We had a massive, massive request from some of the post surveys asking for us to create some type of private group that people could join. We chose Facebook because we know so many people are on it. So again, we'll give you the option to join this if you want to search for Cultivate Advisors in Facebook. It is an invite-only, access-only group. So just know you will have to submit your application, and then we'll approve once we confirm that you're one of the client members. And encourage you to jump on and have a conversation. Ask some questions and see where it kind of takes you. You'll see in the chat box there's a link that we just threw your way that you can use to start engaging in that. We're going to start to get some forums and discussions going. As of right now, we're just working to get all of our members to sign up to that group. All right, I think that's enough community updates for today. Let's get into this content. I know that's why you're all here. Really excited to share this. I have to set a few expectations. One is what I'm going to walk through, what Patrick's going to walk through, it's not rocket science. You may have heard this before. This may be a reminder for some of this content. Other content may just be a different way we're describing it. But the point of a lot of this content is to bring it front of mind, bring timely things to your attention that you want to focus on as a business owner that's going to help you take that next step or really propel your business to that next stage. So keep that in mind. And we operate on this theme of graduated learning. And I've used this picture in every webinar because I think it just really speaks to what we're all trying to do. Some of you are coming in as beginners today. Some of you are coming in as experts when it comes to creating more revenue within your company. And what I want you to think about today is, what step are you on? Where are you at in this scale? And how do we get you to go 1 or 2 steps? My intention, I can't do in 45 minutes of content. We can't take you from beginner to expert. That's why we have a service. It's one-on-one advising where you get to work with your advisors consistently. And so what I'm looking for today is to help you find those 1 or 2 things that are big shifts that you can take action on, that have you thinking differently, that's going to get that lift in your business. So just know at the end of this webinar, I'm going to come back to you and I'm going to ask you, what were those 1 or 2 things? And I'm going to ask that you share that, in the chat with us, because that'll help us continue to make our content better and better by knowing what really hit and what really helped connect for each person that participated. All right, and a lot of you have probably seen our entrepreneurial stages. If you haven't, make sure you talk to your advisor about that. But just keep in mind, some of the content today, we're going to be speaking to hustlers, folks that are solopreneurs. They're doing all the sales. It's all on them. We're also going to be talking to some of our larger stages, though, as well, talking about how to do some of the items we're giving you, but work that through your team and how to implement that through the team that you've built. Obviously, depending on what stage you're in, your content is very different. So just know we've really pulled in different pieces of content that will hit all 5 stages. So here's my agenda today. We're going to talk a little bit about the key levers that's going to help get that lift in revenue coming out early in 2020. And then there's 3 core elements I want to talk to you about today. I'm going to talk about win-back campaigns. This is one of my favorite tactics to re-energize my revenue every year. The buying line, that's when Patrick's going to come on and really help connect. How do you know you have someone over the buying line so you can actually close them? And then we're also going to give you just a couple quick tips on upselling and cross-selling. I think so many people look past that when they're looking to grow their revenue numbers, and it can be such a cheap, inexpensive way to get a lift in your revenue with the same amount of customers. So really excited to be walking you through these elements. Let's do a quick chat in before we start to give you some of the training content. I see a bunch of you are kind of already doing the thing. You've been here, you know how this works. That's fantastic. Where are you logging in from? And is there anything specific you're hoping to gain from this webinar? And again, this is the agenda here that we're planning to walk through, but we'd just love to hear anybody's perspective on chat. What are you hoping to gain from this webinar? Why did you take 45 minutes to 50 minutes of your day to figure out what the details are? So it looks like a win-back strategy would be really helpful. Winback seems to be winning the games. Maureen, awesome. Looks like marketing and sales is going to be your 2020 big focus. Stuart, anything you can get from the sales funnel? Great, thank you. Brendan, great. How to raise that close rate. Specific phrases and sentences for asking new questions. I'm going to give you some really good examples of different languages. That should actually be hit today. You're in our downtime, it sounds like, Jason, great. So if you can get some fresh ideas, that'd be fantastic. Well, that's great. I just wanted to see if there was anything I'm not going to cover so I could speak to that. But it looks like most things that are being shared, we're going to touch in some capacity. Well, thanks for the engagement already, everybody. Again, keep asking questions. We've got our advisors on here to help answer questions as we're going along. So I want to bring some urgency to the table. 2020 is almost over. Now you're probably seeing that and go, no, it's not. It just started. Wrong mindset. As a business owner, we should be leading our businesses at least 6 months in advance. We have to be that far in front of our team if we want to help set our teams up for success. And even if you're a solopreneur, your goal is to look further out. Yes, you might be managing yourself day to day at that point, but you still want to know the objective and the vision of 6 months out of where you want to be at. And what I found in a lot of my advising work, and I know a lot of the advisors that are on our team would agree to, is if at a company that we're working with, as a small business owner has not really locked in and knows how they're going to hit their revenue for the year by the 6 month mark, meaning they're not trending and kind of already on that track, it is very rare that we see the revenue hit. Very few people throw the Hail Mary in Q4 and actually achieve it. And so I want you to shift your paradigm with me as we go through this content today. You don't have 11 and a half months to hit your revenue. I want you to think about that you have 5.5 months to set yourself up to hit your revenue goal. And I think that's a really important mindset that you have going into 2020 if you really want to get growth at the top line of your business. And the reason for this is that after those 6 months, I think what you're going to find is the time that it will take to implement and shift things in your business will get the lift for your revenue the following year. So to really make 2020 count, we're going to assume that you've got 5.5 months. And I think if you can put that urgency on yourself, you'll find yourself making more impactful and more prioritized based decisions that'll help you in pursuit of hitting your 2020 revenue goals. And so I want to walk through some of these key levers that we find really will dictate getting this, this re-energize, getting this kind of buildup of revenue that so many people want in Q1. Q1 usually can completely make or break the year as it comes to revenue. And this is what we are going to find most people feel are important. This is what you might be thinking. How many contracts do I need to get? How many leads do I need to get? For most, it's all about consuming more. It's all about consumption. And that's what they drive their team on. That's what they drive themselves on. And don't get me wrong, if you do more, right? If you do more, absolutely, you'll grow in revenue. But people don't fully understand the cost of doing more, and they don't understand what it takes to do more. And it can be very hard to predict and be able to manage the growth of your business. Often when we see people get a 10 to 15% growth in revenue, what we find is they're consuming more. But if you want to get to that 20, 30, 40, maybe even a higher percentage of revenue growth, depending on what stage the business is in, you've got to look at some other metrics, and we want to just bring some really clear tension and clarification to those. And so the three that I want to bring attention to for you are these three. What is your cost of acquisition? What is your closing rate? And what is your average contract size? Because if you can move these three levers, you'll find that you can also get revenue growth without consuming more. And that's really important as a small business, because the reality is if you're operational, if you're a service, and the operations is easier because you're dealing with the same number of clients per se, because of the average order size, or if you have the same amount of pipeline as you've always had, but you're just closing at a higher rate, or for those few leads that you are getting in additional leads into your pipeline, the ability for you to lower that cost of acquisition is what will allow you to then get a much more larger surplus of those leads for the same amount of marketing spent, meaning we remove the risk from you as the owner to get that lift and growth. So we're going to slow down. Patrick and I are going to slow down and talk you through these three kind of clear, important levers that we feel people often leave out, especially in the early part of the year. So in form of cost of acquisition, this is going to be the first lever we're going to slow down and talk through. And I'm going to give it really straightforward and simple. Here's the quick and easy kind of equation you can follow. Total marketing and sales spend divided by the number of leads or contracts. Again, people like to really estimate cost of acquisition by lead or by contract. That's generally how we see it. And then just, again, a couple examples. Let's say we're spending $250,000 on marketing and sales combined, and we're generating 2,500 leads a year. This would tell us that we are paying about $100 per lead. If we did that for contracts, since we get about 200 contracts, in this example, it'd be about $1,250 per contract. This is really helpful information that we can use. And what this does is it allows us to really drive to the next step what it's going to look like for our marketing spend, how to make ROI decisions. And so I want to get an idea of where everybody's at on this webinar today. I want to know, how much does each lead or client cost you to acquire? So let's go ahead and launch that poll, and let's let you go ahead and jump in and share with us. I just want to know, do you have no idea what it is? Do you have a rough idea, but you haven't really fully got it down to a precise science? Or I have a really clear acquisition amount. I know exactly what these numbers are. We've got just closer to 50% of attendance so far have voted, so give everybody another few seconds here. Getting closer here, we're passing 70%. So for those of you that haven't voted yet, please vote so we can get an idea. All right, we're starting to wrap up here. I think we can go ahead and wrap this up. What I'm seeing here is pretty even actually in the top two. About 45% of participants today are both either saying I have no idea or I have a rough idea but not precise. And then a few of you, about 5%, are saying I do have a really clear per acquisition amount that you've identified, which is fantastic. That's what you want to see as that third option. Well, I'm going to give you a couple tips on that today because I think this is going to help, and I think this will get you moving in the right direction. And then we're actually going to do some workshops to help you start to understand a way that, on my favorite tactic, to drive down cost of acquisition for the year. So for those of you that are needing help on how to identify the spend, all right, let's walk you through that. One, you need to run your closing rates by lead tactic. So most people, when they're identifying the spend, they think they need to, they just look at it every lead or every contract. That's helpful, but it doesn't give you the levers to pull to actually shift your cost of acquisition. So instead, what I'm going to ask you to do, and these are just nice, simple steps I would encourage you to write down to go do after this webinar. And if you have any questions on how to do it, great conversations and questions to bring to your advisor. But I want you to go run your closing rates by lead tactics. Take every deal you've closed, figure out how many leads you've generated from those tactics and what the conversion rate is. You'll find that every lead tactic has a different close rate. I want you then to correlate the marketing spend per lead tactic. So figure out how much you total spent in marketing, maybe just last year, and then figure out how much of that did you spend on that specific lead tactic. And you'll have to guess some capacity. I know it's not always a direct correlation, but just use some basic math to figure out generally how much did you spend in marketing. From there, go figure out the total amount you spent on your sales team. If it's just you, then maybe look at it more on a time basis and what you're worth in your time if you were to pay yourself at market as a sales rep, if you happen to be in the hustler stage. But what I want you to think about is how much time are you spending, meaning, maybe a cold call lead you're doing 10 meetings for, but maybe to get the sale, but maybe referral meetings you're getting, you're doing 2 meetings to get a sale. So you have to really allocate the amount of time and cost you're spending to go through the process of those lower lead conversions versus those higher lead type conversions. And that's going to give you just that total rough spend. And that's really the direction I want to get everybody up to, so you understand not just from total marketing and sales spend, but you get this down into a per lead conversion that's going to give you the levers. And here's why. What I want you to do is, once you go through, you should probably have 8 to 10 tactics that you generally use to find your clients. It doesn't matter if it's a product or service business here. And I want you to transition those worst 2 tactic investments. So take the bottom 2 that you have the worst cost per acquisition on. Stop investing in those 2 and go double up your spending on your top 2 tactic investments, right? And that's just a simple thing that every single person on this webinar can do, no matter the type of business, to just make sure they're allocating money and time to the best and highest converting lead tactic. And that is going to massively drop down your cost of acquisition, all right? That's when you have to make sure you are set. I just saw the question here, if you're just, considering sales, you're just getting into your first time of sales, maybe you're earlier in on your business, still, then you just go run and get the leads you need, but then come back and figure out what are those tactics at the end of this year, and then do this at the end of 2020. But for those that already have an established sales last year, you should be able to go run this analysis and, call it a couple hours of time just hanging out on QuickBooks, looking at your P&L, kind of working it backwards. Now, when you make your budget decisions through 2020, and I really wanted to hit this bullet today in this webinar, because Q1, often what we find people realize is they make majority of their budget decisions in Q1. They set up the year, right? You can all relate to that. So by having this early on in the year, now you're ready to attach that when you have decisions. You can ask your team, will we get this many contracts or this many leads if we spend this much money on this lead tactic? And now it becomes more of a data-based decision versus a gut, I hope marketing and sales works out. So I really want to slow down and give you my favorite tactic to drive down cost of acquisition for the year, and that is the Winback campaign. And I know a lot of you from check-in, you're excited to talk about this, but one of the best things you can do to get more sales is a Winback campaign, because normally Winback campaigns don't really cost you any additional money as you already paid to acquire them. At some point, you have the customer or the prospect that you've already brought into your funnel. And that's what the term Winback means for those that maybe haven't heard that terminology. So I'm going to slow down and walk you through a Winback campaign. I'm going to give you examples, give you steps to follow. And what I'm going to ask for each of you to do is grab some note-taking material, because we're going to do a workshop along the way. And I'm going to set you up to where you can go implement a Winback campaign extremely quickly. So timing is everything. I find Q1 is the best. That's why we're talking about this in early January, as we're all excited and optimistic to kick off our businesses this year in pursuit of our growth. Again, you've paid to acquire these people, so now it's all about converting them. So step 1, you're going to need to organize your 2019 list. Now you can go back even further if you'd like, but to keep it simple and to test it, just go back to your 2019 list. And what I'm going to ask you to do is I want you to build a tailored message to each group. And I'm going to give you the groups to break down your 2019 list into. One is past customers. Now, some of you may not be able to sell your product or service to your customers again, but maybe you can upsell them. Maybe you can give them new products or services. And there may be a few people on the webinar today that, just based on the business, they can't ever go back to past customers. So if that's a thing, no problem. But for most of you, I imagine, based on industries we work with, you should be able to get a list of all of your past customers in place. Number 2 would be your not closed. What is the not closed list? Meaning these are all of the individuals that came in and you got them in the pipeline, you tried to sell them your product or service, and you did not end up getting the deal done, meaning they have not landed yet. And they could have given you an assortment of reasons, all the way back to Q1 of last year, just saying it wasn't the right timing or we're not interested. Don't remove anyone. Just build the lists and organize them so you have their emails and phone numbers for all of your customer and prospect lists. And your third is your dead leads. These are folks that maybe had reached out to you or you had identified them, and maybe you started to have the conversation, but you never quite got into the actual sales process. You never actually got a hold of them to continue the discussion, you or your sales team. And so I want you to think about these 3 separated lists, because each of these, you have to send them a tailored message to be able to get them back in to your sales funnel. So step 1, and obviously we're not going to do this as part of the workshop today. This is going to take a little bit, but work with your team to pull this list together, or you go pull this list together, and I'm going to walk you through what to do with each of them. So let's talk about how you're going to plan your approach, right? On your planning your approach, it's identify the email server with click tracking. You have to have an email system that allows you to track clicks. This is very, very important. What I mean is when you send an email, you would have the reporting to know if they clicked on something in that email or not. This is a very crucial small thing you have to have set up to really set up a strong win-back campaign that does the work for you. My favorite program is Active Campaign. I know there's a bunch of others out there. If somebody has a favorite they'd like to share, feel free to throw that in the chat. But my favorite is Active Campaign. Now, you're going to end up building 2 to 4 emails per list. And we are going to put 5 to 7 days between them. And I see a couple people saying, hey, we do face-to-face. No problem. You can still follow this program just through getting on the phone and leaving voicemails or making phone calls to get them back. This isn't about making the sale. This is about getting them re-engaged, coming back to potentially get to that face-to-face sale. That's what the purpose of this conversion is. So build your 2 to 4 emails per list with 5 to 7 days between them. And that's how we're going to set these to go out. And you're going to want to use extremely bold subject lines to get their attention. And what you're going to do is you're going to focus on the common pain points that were based on their current buying journey. And if that sounds a little complex and hard to make tangible, don't worry. I'm going to show you a few examples here in just a moment. Once you then get their attention with the subject line, it's all about having resources or write-ups on your website that they can click to. And the reason why you want to make this not just a response to you, most people do not want to respond. What they want to do is they'll click if they're interested. And if you're getting that reporting, you can prioritize who is re-engaging with you and who is not re-engaging with you. So that way you can focus on who to reach out to, maybe a bit more assertively. So the key when you write up your language, have a lot of direct, assertive questions within that language that will get the conversation going. So now we have 2 potential hooks. We have the link, which will tell us if they're more of a passive person engaging. And then we can identify those that are actively engaging because we're going to ask really assertive questions that would have them write back with open responses, allowing us just to get the conversation going, because there's a reason why they've fallen out in the past for whatever reason. And we have to slow step and convert them back in to the process. So emails should appear from you as the individual. I find that works much better, not the company. So if you have a sales team, your sales reps would be pushing this out, or your marketing team would be pushing this out. But it should look like it's coming from an individual, not the company. That goes a lot further, the more tailored and individualized it can appear versus the large HTML emails. We continue to find those conversions are just not working when we look at the success across the community. So those are some of my big tips. Let's put this into action. So past customers examples, and this is where I'm going to assign some work here for all of us and give us a few minutes. I want to show you what I would go do based on my business of Cultivate Advisors for all of our past customers last year. I would write something on the subject line that says, you know, have you heard? And I'd probably say, we have fixed our biggest problem. I would be using that type of subject line because people most likely left us because maybe they weren't happy or maybe we didn't achieve what they were looking for. Not sure exactly what the issue is, but I know that that would probably get their attention and show that we're calling the elephant out in the room. That might be an example of our first reach out. Again, if you don't want to send emails, all of this can be done via phone as well. My content inside would be more like, check out our big update we just announced that is helping us go 5 times faster with our clients. Again, I have to have better more concrete content to get them excited, but I want to create a way to see if they click, to just see if they're even interested or intrigued. So I've got to write it in a way that has them click. So instead of me writing a long email, post it on the back of your website where again, they just have to click through to it with a simple blog announcement or simple promotion, just to help explain, this is what we've switched in our company, this is what we've maybe done to help make it better and add more value to our client base. So that's a really rough, again, I could show you a bunch of examples, but I just wanted to give you a high level, kind of rough version of a type of subject line we may go after. And then below that, you're seeing just how we might get them to engage and click with us. So what I want to do is I want to allow each person on this webinar just to take a moment, think about your past customers. What is the very first step of their buying journey they need just re-engage with you? What's one of the biggest pain points that people have that allows them to get that person over the line to have another conversation? So we're just going to take some silence here. People love when I slow down. Grab that notepad and write out for just a minute or two the first couple thoughts that come to your mind that you might be able to use as a resource or something to get people to click, to learn more and just show that they're engaged and show that they're intrigued to go further, to look into your company again in a different way. Again, some of you that may be earning back past customers because you've lost them. Others may be looking to upsell or cross-sell additional products. It depends on your industry and your vision of what you're trying to solve this year. I'm going to give everybody just one quick minute here. Just a quick question that came in while people are working. I was asked if the slides will be available. You will be able to access the slides on our Learning Center. So if you log into the Learning Center on the back end of Cultivate's website, you'll be able to access the slides. Past clients would be mostly for referrals. Diana, great question. It's probably more of a referral process that you're creating then. I don't know if past customers would be applicable for you if you don't have an ability to get something else out of them. But if it is referrals, which is very important, then what I would want to encourage you to do is to set yourself up to go set up a referral program. So maybe just change the title to, this is my referral program. How do I send really meaningful content out to get them to intrigue, showing they may be interested because they really enjoyed working with us. And a lot of those folks can be, they leave a good review. Get them to leave a review, and then you know who to reach out to get the referrals. All right, I'm going to move on. I wanted to give everybody just a minute or two there. Hopefully you were able to just jot down a couple shorthand thoughts that take into account getting somebody to click. I'm going to make this a little more complicated with the next example here of groupings. If you have an example of something that you really, really like, I would encourage you to go ahead and jump on to the chat and share. People love seeing those examples. So if you're open to sharing, I'm not going to make anybody, this is your personal business. But if you have an example that you're really proud of that you just wrote out, feel free to share with the group. It will only help with some people that might be scratching their heads that this isn't as normal or as easy for them to write up. We all have our strengths and weaknesses, obviously, as business owners. So let's move now to our not closed. Again, this is those that were in our pipeline. We had the opportunity, we had the chance to pitch them, and essentially we either got told no, we got ghosted, or they said not the right timing. Whatever it was, they gave us some form of an objection and we could not get them over the line. So this is how I would approach this. This is my example of my subject line. Are you fearful that having an advisor will just be a lot of talk and not tangible results? I'm picking the pain point or the objection we're commonly handling, which is people would maybe challenge, are we going to provide ROI? That's for our business. You have to think about that for your business. I would put the content to say, you realize you're not alone in thinking this. Often people feel this way. Watch 2 minutes of our most recent case study. And this person, would be a video or some type of blog that shows what the ROI was and what their perspective of it was. Again, they're intrigued. They're going to click. But I'm also going to start to incorporate, if you get better at this and a little bit more advanced, incorporate those really assertive questions. The reality is you're missing out. We want the chance to show you what we're capable of. What will it take? I want people to write back, nothing. Because I get to then write back, why? I'm now in a conversation, right? Some people are going to say, Well, honestly, I didn't like the cost. Okay, great. Can we get on the phone and talk about that? Again, I'm selling to the next step. I just want to get them back into the conversation. That's the purpose of having the link to know who to reach out to with a phone call, or by having an open question that gets them to respond to me so I can start that conversation and move it forward. That's what this is all about. So workshop time here, this is what I'm looking for. Write out shorthanded version of your situation for not closed prospects. So again, I'm just going to give a quick minute, and I want you to write out what would be a good question you could ask, or what would be a resource you could drive people to when it comes to the Winback for not closed. And I just want to give a big shout out here to Jess. She put an awesome example for her past clients for some language that she's going to use, it looks like. So thanks for sharing that, Jess. For purposes of time, I'm going to keep moving. So just be conscious of that. I'm going to now talk about the dead lead. Again, I just want to give people examples in case they're getting stuck. This would be maybe a subject line a lot of you could maybe copy. We didn't even get to show you what we're capable of. You're missing out, right? Show them, like, make them that, that fear of missing out is big right now. What percentage of revenue and profit did you grow by last year? I'm asking a very, strategic question that matters for us. If you're maybe a gym, you could ask, did you hit your fitness goals last year? What were they? Get something just to get a response. Again, this is how you get you or your sales team driving. And the content I might continue with is you've got to be a little curious. Click here to browse our advisor's background. It could be the missing puzzle piece. So notice I'm keeping with my trend of missing out, which is kind of how I'm managing the pain point. They just don't have the information to be able to make a decision. And that's how I'm writing this content to get their movement. So again, you're going to want to take some time to write these out. And again, you're looking for 3 to 5 emails or 3 to 5 phone touch points, whichever your preference is based on the industry of your business. And ultimately, if you can write these out shorthand first, you'll feel good about them, then take the time to formally write them out. I find that works much, much better and quicker. So I want to just land on a couple final tips on the Winback campaign. Don't stay on email. Email is how I like to start. Some of you, it may not work in your industry. Again, start with phone. But when people start to engage with you, get them on the phone. Pick up the phone. Make the sale. Number 2, multiple touch points. So if initial individuals that engage, if after you're through that group, don't be afraid to call back those others just to check in. Maybe they didn't get the emails, and use the same kind of language in your voicemails. And if you do this right, I just want to help you realize you could triple the size of your current sales funnel. And you don't have to pay any additional money to acquire more leads, more consumption, which is why I spent so much time on this tactic. Because 1, a lot of people are saying this is what was most important to them. But 2, you have to drive these Winbacks early on in the year because it's going to take you a little while to get them into the funnel and get them converted. It's going to be a longer sales cycle because of that initial conversion. Great question, Brandon here. Do you recommend leaving voicemails? Absolutely. You have to leave the voicemail. Most people do not pick up the phone, but they will listen to the voicemail, especially with the smartphones that read them for us. They will follow up. So now I'm going to move to this closing rate. Remember, we talked about these 3 levers, and this is where I'm going to start to bring in Patrick. But before I do, I want to make sure everybody's clear. How do you focus on developing your closing rate? Number of contracts, number of sales meetings. So it's number of contracts divided by your number of sales meetings gives you your closing rate. So again, really simple example. If you're going to do 100 meetings and you have a 30% close rate, you're going to sell 30 contracts. But if it's a 50% close rate, you're going to sell 50 contracts. So again, this is just showing you the simple math of you can double your revenue with the same amount of work. And this can be a great strategy to get growth for your revenue in 2020. So we're going to launch our second poll. I want to know, how much time are you spending developing yourself or your team when it comes to the closing rate? So I'm curious just what people's perspective is here. Do you play the numbers game? It's all about consumption. You're not actually spending much time focusing on the closing rate? Or are you thinking a lot about the closing rate, but you just kind of accept it and you're not really fully spending time developing on it? Or the third and final option I'd be curious to know is you're spending most of your time developing the closing rate. You actually spend a lot of the time in that world because you know how powerful that lever really is. We'll give everyone here just a moment. Coming up here about 50% of attendance so far. So give everybody just a few more seconds. How much time are you spending developing yourself or your team, depending on your stage, on close rates? Okay, let's go ahead and publish the results here just for purposes of time. It's pretty well spread. Okay, so Patrick, this is going to be helpful for you to understand that it looks like about a third of folks are really just going after consumption. They're not spending time on the closing rate. And then another 45%, they don't. It looks like they understand the value of the closing rate, but they're not really spending time developing it. And then we do have about 25% that are spending a lot of time on their closing rate, which is great. So Patrick, I want to introduce you. Patrick has had an unbelievable run leading sales teams. He's an unbelievable top performer here at Cultivate as an advisor, and I'm really excited for him to share with you his version of the buying line. So Patrick, I'll give it to you to take it away.
All right, thanks, Casey. So let's talk about how do we improve our closing rate. So I want to give you a mental framework and a model to think about the buying line, and then we'll talk about maybe some tactics where we can do this well, or tactics where it kind of falls off the rails a little bit. So this looks simple when you see the few lines there, but as we slow down and think about it, I think it could really help if you're the solo producer in your business or if you have a sales team. So if we go to the next slide, the y-axis there, that represents the prospect's interest or their urgency that they're feeling, and on the x-axis is time. So that could be, the number of touches or the number of meetings. And with any transaction, the prospect has this imaginary line where if they like you, there's trust, they feel enough urgency, they see the value, they just need to get up over that line a little bit, and then we can summarize and then close or work with them, right? So you've probably experienced the good, the bad, the ugly of this yourself, whether it's in your business or even on a personal side. So maybe some examples where somebody just did a great job and walked you through the process, or maybe you were in a retail setting or looking at a vendor and you just felt rushed or it didn't feel right. That's the buying line. So I want you to think about some recent examples, and it could be you're checking out a new CRM tool. It could be you're looking at a car or winter jacket. I think we've all been there where we felt just we're ready to buy and we're over that buying line, or where you weren't quite ready for the decision and you weren't there. So with the prospects that you talk to, whether we have B2C Cultivate members on the line or B2B, there's an imaginary buying line for every one of your prospects, and we want to talk about how do we recognize that, get them there sooner, and then be able to help them get to a decision so we can increase our closing rate. So if we go to the next slide, I want to talk about how to win the buying line. And when I say win the buying line, that means either get them to the buying line sooner in the process, or do some things that can get them up over that where we might not have been able to do that otherwise. And there's a few tactics that I'll give you here that can really create that urgency. So the first would be covering objections, ideally on the front end. I think we don't need to be shy of objections, but if we can help cover objections, you're going to help people feel good about the decision and get them there. So one of the tactics that I always like is if you create a statement on the front end of your meeting that turns the biggest objections into differentiators. So prior to this, I worked in digital marketing, and when we'd start the meeting, we'd say, there's a few reasons people like working with us. Number one, we don't have a contract. Number two, we have somebody that handles the service and delivers it for you. Number three, we have affordable price points for most small to mid-sized companies. And the fourth thing is we have a really high retention rate at 96%. So I think most of our customers are seeing the value. So when I rattled those off, obviously I did it quickly. In their mind, they're thinking, is this expensive? Am I going to have to do a lot of work? Is this going to work with my current system? Am I going to get burned? And if we can bring those to the front and create a differentiator statement, you help cover a lot of those objections on the front end, and people will feel at ease and they'll get closer to the buying line. The second one I listed there is asking open-ended questions. I don't know if you've ever heard that quote. People will believe 20% of what you say, and they'll believe 80% of what they say themselves, right? So if I'm working for HubSpot or ActiveCampaign or MailChimp, I saw some of these tools in there, and I just said, wouldn't it be nice to have a more intelligent marketing system? Somebody might say, yeah. But if I can ask them open-ended question that says, tell me about how you track your leads, or how do you segment your customers, or are you able to remarket to your customers? If I can ask those open-ended questions, then the prospect, the person that we're interacting with, they'll unveil their own pain points, and they'll create their own urgency and move closer up the buying line. The third one there is feature benefit matching. So a feature is basically something about our product that we might like, or is really a high point, and the benefit is how we connect it to what's important to our prospective customer. So Casey did a beautiful job of this. I didn't even tell him to, but when he was talking about JustWorks, he said, JustWorks is a co-employment model. Who knows what that means, right? And then he said, so they actually share the risk instead of you as the owner, right? So he took it from this feature to a benefit of why we might all care. If I sell an accounting software, a feature might be all your books are updated quickly and you'll have the info by the 10th of the month. Well, if I'm an owner that doesn't always look at my books, what does that matter? Well, the benefit, you could say, what that means to you is you'll have intelligent information about your business and be able to make the right decisions quickly. So a good tool there is a phrase to say what this means to you is. So if you can line up your feature and then you just say what this means to you is, it connects it to the benefit. And then people will be right up close to that buying line where they can kind of like start to feel the experience of enjoying your product or service. The other one I listed out there is reading and recognizing. So it's a little harder to tangibilize this, but we want to read and recognize what personality style do we have in front of us. We also want to read and recognize their energy in the room. Are they slowing down? Are they leaning forward? Was there something that we talked about that seemed to really resonate with them? And also reading and recognizing, do I feel like they're up over the buying line? Do they have enough information? And if so, let's summarize and then talk about next steps. So you want to, as you get more reps, you'll be able to kind of think about what is making this person tick, what do they care about most, and how do we adjust a little bit to be able to help them get there quickly. And the last one I listed, I was just using more visuals. I'm a big fan of using marketing materials or a sales deck that helps people understand quickly a concept that we're trying to convey or create credibility. So these are all examples where we can maybe condense the time it takes to get them over the buying line, or maybe help somebody get up over that might not have otherwise if we were just having a simple conversation. So that's how we win it. Let's go to the other side. What are some practices we want to avoid? How do we lose the buying line? So if you see that visual here, these are people that maybe have interest, they get up close and they never get there, or they could even get over the buying line and drop back below it. So when does this happen? A lot of times we might not have built enough trust. So maybe we didn't spend enough rapport, or we didn't establish credibility, and you've probably had awkward interactions where somebody tried to close and you weren't there yet. We don't have enough trust. Another one I see a lot is, especially in B2B services, we can get excited about their feedback, or we can get excited about what we do, and we'll talk too much and they'll dip back below the buying line. So we had them there, and then we give them too much information and they lost interest, the meeting ran too long, or that third one is we might have created confusion. So with B2B service companies, a lot of times I'll see people, they'll talk about things in implementation that are way further down the road that maybe we shouldn't bring up until somebody's a customer. And then you create confusion and you lost the deal because you talked about something that might not come up for a couple of months. And then the last one there, where we might be sitting right now, letting time pass. So that's just natural. If people haven't talked to you in a while, they might sort of cool down or go cold. And a lot of us might be in this situation middle of January if you talk to somebody in October, November, or December. And it's just something to be mindful of, trying to condense your meetings, keep your follow-ups tight, and just know that if you haven't talked to them in a while, they might be back below the buying line than the last time you talked to them, right? Just think about if you're a consumer and you considered a remodel or a kitchen or something 3 months ago, and now when that person follows up, you're just thinking, do I want to spend 20 grand, whatever it is, right? So we need to be mindful of that and try to keep those touches close so that we can not lose the buying line. So there's a few wins and a few losses of maybe some things to implement. And if we go to the next slide, this looks like a simple diagram, right? But it's so what? Why does this matter? Well, the reality is the buying line happens throughout the entire sales process, from our first touch to our onboarding. And it's something that we really need to be mindful of, because at the end of the day, point number two, we often can't control where the prospect sits with their buying line, but we can help influence them to either move the timeline up or get them over it, or recognize the things that might have converted them versus not, right? So if you have a sales organization, you probably have people that have a 20% versus 45% closing rate, and it's hard to put your fingers on why. And it's a lot of these tiny details with the buying line that can help get people up over it. So I would encourage you, if we go to the next slide, mind the line, mind the buying line, really think about what makes that person tick. What are some things that I can do? Because it'll take you up this spectrum here where we see at the bottom, you might be unconscious, incompetent, where I'm struggling and I'm not sure why. And then you can move up into, okay, now I know that I am struggling and I've identified a couple of areas, to then, okay, this is working, I'm doing things right. And I realized it was that one thing I did, or the way I presented the proposal, or the fact that I had a conversation instead of an email. And then you can get to that last phase where it's like riding a bicycle or tying your shoes, and you're just really effective and don't have to think about it. And then you can really pay attention to that person in the meeting or in your interactions, or be able to teach other people in your team how to do it. So that's the buying line. Hopefully I'd encourage you to take 30 seconds and pick one or two things where you say, you know what, this is something that we're doing where maybe people are losing interest, or maybe we could do something to get people there sooner. Or is there something I could do with our features and benefits or a statement to help get people up over that buying line sooner? So write it down, make a note. You can share with your advisor. And it's definitely something that you can work on where we can increase our closing rate and not have to necessarily get more leads through the door. All right, Casey, I'll pass it back your way.
Awesome, thanks, Patrick. The big hit there for the buying line is you need a resource you can use to move that closing rate. And again, the purpose of understanding the buying line and bringing that language into your own skill or to your sales team skill is for the pursuit of getting them bought in to grow that closing rate. And again, that's going to re-energize and put more revenue in the pocket of this business this year. My third and final kind of lever here, and I only have just a couple quick hits on this that we plan, just because this can be different depending on each business, but moving the average contract size. People completely underestimate how fast you can grow revenue by moving the average contract size. And again, just to give you the simple example, take your total revenue generated, divide it by the number of contracts. When you divide that by your number of contracts, that gives you your average order. I just want to show you what I mean by growth. Let's say we have 100 contracts with an average contract of 15,000. Well, that'll get me 1.5 million in revenue. But if I can have 100 contracts times 20,000, because I have an extra 5,000 for every contract, that gets me to 2 million. Same amount of work, same amount of output. However, I am able to get that much more revenue. So again, this can be a massive way to help grow the business. So I want to launch my third and final poll here. I want to know, how could you potentially raise your average contract size this year? Just curious, based on your business, what would be your ideal option here? So we're going to go ahead and launch that. Would you just increase pricing for new opportunities? Would you upsell current customers on premier products? Or would you cross-sell them by packaging offerings? And some of you may go, actually, crap, I can do all three of these things. This would help, absolutely, move that average contract size, therefore generating more revenue this year. Give everybody just a second here, as always, just to let them read it over themselves and pick the best option. This is great, very spread across, very evenly, which I don't always see on our polls. So this is interesting. Hopefully, it's got you thinking about, this could be your takeaway, right? This is the one thing I should easily go focus on. How do I do this better, and maybe bring this conversation to my advisor to get it on the roadmap? Great, we're going to go ahead and wrap that poll up. It's actually very evenly spread. The winner was cross-sell by packaging others out of all three there, but the others were very, very close. Here's a few things I can share with you. If you're thinking about pricing and it's for a product business, make sure you A/B test your pricing to see how your conversion drops. It's just simple math. Based on the percentage of conversion that dropped, am I making more money? Meaning I may be selling less, but am I doing more revenue? Am I making more money, despite that increase? And I always encourage you to move pricing for product businesses during discount or sales periods. So that way people don't see that you've raised the price, because you can keep the discount off to keep pricing stable, and then slowly move it back up. So just a quick tip around that. On a service business, if you're thinking about shifting pricing, start with new clients coming in for confidence. Know that you can sell at that level. and then give notice for the shift in pricing to your client group. Allow to save the clients in case the increase doesn't go as planned. So what I mean by that is by giving them notice, hey, in 60 days, in 90 days, they'll bring the conversation to you, and you could potentially save in case you're maybe too small of a business, you can't risk losing a couple clients. That's a really good tactic though, where you can test the waters and then make an exception for the one or two that are just really fighting you on it, but will allow you to start to move that widget higher and higher. If you're looking at upselling here, what I'm going to share with you on this is where you sell the customer, this is where you're going to sell the customer a better product at a greater price than the original request that they brought to you. So again, some keys to success for upselling. Do not just upsell to upsell. Make sure you're upselling the better product or service you offer based on their needs. And take it a step further, show them the difference if it's possible. Show them the output that they will receive by product or service if they choose the higher one. That way, because they need to compare and contrast the value in their mind, but be assumptive. If their needs are aligning with the higher level product or service, make sure you're being assumptive that that's really the only option based on what they want, because you could potentially create paralysis. And for those looking for those quick tips on cross-selling, this is, again, just so we're clear on the definition, you're selling additional or add-on products. That's what the intent of cross-selling is. So again, some of the keys that we've seen is group-related products together. Look for that in your business. How can you group these together? Because if you could sell for that much more at a discounted rate while you have them in front of you ready to buy, that's going to raise that average contract. Don't provide too many options though. Keep it simple, because that's how you'll create paralysis by analysis, and it'll slow down their decision making. And lastly, one of my big strategies, I like to get a verbal first on the initial sell to keep it simple. And then through the process of going to the contract, if this is allowed in your business, I then like to bring on the additional options to help get the upsell. My favorite example is if you've ever bought a car, you buy the car and then they sell you a slew of 30 other products. And you always grab at least one or two of them, and they're grabbing another 5 to 6% jump in contract size. So that's my simple analogy that majority of you have probably experienced at some point. All right, so we are running close here to time. And what I want to do is I want to remind you that we covered the key levers, which were closing rate. We talked about the cost of acquisition with the winbacks, the closing rate with the buying line, and then we talked about the contract size, upselling, cross-selling. My big asks: talk to your advisors about what you learned today. What were those few things that you want to add to your roadmaps with your advisors that you can take deeper and get implemented? This is the first step of information today. Leverage the Learning Center. We have a pricing toolkit you can use on from the Learning Center. You can watch our upselling video course on the Learning Center. We have a needs finding video course to connect what Patrick was sharing. We have a matching features and benefits course. We have some unbelievable sales and revenue tools on the Learning Center. Ensure you log in. You can do that on the back of my.cultivateadvisors.com so long as you're a client with us. Remember, there are thousands of pages of training, a ton of microburst video trainings, toolkits, and workbooks. And for those that don't know, you can actually add your employees on the back end of the site at $25 a month. So if you have a sales team, you can put them through our 5-hour sales series that will bring their skill and move the closing rate. It'll be one of your best ROI decisions that you've made. And by the way, if you're curious why I'm pitching you $25 a month per employee, I'm just showing you a really great example of cross-selling. This is how simple it can be when you take your engaged community and show them additional options that will help solve a core need. And I know that this group is interested in moving those closing rates based on your attendance. Friendly reminder, our next event is February 12th, our quarterly event. We hope to see you live in Chicago, Green Bay, Denver, or Vancouver, or jump on our virtual if that's not one of your regions where our offices are located. And if you're curious when you'll see me again, I'm going to be on March 18th, so mark your calendars. I'm going to be talking about how to manage your cash flow. So I'm not going to talk about how the financials work. I'm going to talk about how do you manage cash flow and use cash properly to get growth within the business to make sure we continue to supercharge 2020. We're at the end. Before you go, if you have a minute, jump in this chat and let me know, what is it for you that you captured today? What's that one or two things that you were able to grab today that's going to help you move up in that graduated learning curve to get to the next level of continuing to excel and re-energize the revenue for 2020? I can't wait to read what you put in here that was able to help you today. That's going to help us curate our content. Thank you for being a valued member of Cultivate. We'll see you on the next one.